أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي كان موجودا قبل حدوث الأشياء ويبقى بعد فناء الأشياء تفرد بالأولية والقدم ووسم كل شيء ما عداه بالفناء والعدم كما قال عز شأنه كل شيء هالك إلا وجهه وكل نفس ذائقة الموت وقال كل من عليها فان ويبقى وجه ربك ذي الجلال والإكرام سبحان من لا يخفى عليه اختلاف النيات ولا يعزب عنه معاصي العباد في الخلوات سبحان الذي منه خلقة العباد وإليه المعاد فمن يعمل مثقال ذرة خيرا يرى ومن يعمل مثقال ذرة شرا يرى نشهد أن لا إله إلا هو الملك الذي لا ينازع في ملكه ولا يضاد في حكمه يعذب من يشاء بما يشاء كيف يشاء ويرحم من يشاء بما يشاء كيف يشاء تعذيبه المسيئين عدل وعفوه تفضل ونشهد أن محمدا سيد المرسلين وخير المبشرين والمنذرين صلى الله عليه وآله الهداة المهديين اللهم صل على محمد من ركب سفينتهم نجا واهتدى ومن تخلف عنها ضل فغرق وهوى أوصيكم عباد الله ونفسي بتقوى الله أما بعد. Today and the coming Sunday are very significant days on the calendar, but for very different reasons. Most of the people living in our country are celebrating Christmas today. And we, the Muslims, are mourning for the martyrdom of the Prophet's grandson on Sunday. I will speak about Imam Hussain alayhi salam in the next sermon, but first we should draw our attention to the matter of Christmas. Last week I mentioned some festivals and celebrations that are celebrated in the Caribbean and in Indonesia to mark Ashura, and the belief of some Muslims that are based on legends and myths. If we were to live in the midst of such a society in Indonesia or in the Caribbean, what would our response have been? Would we shrug it off as a cultural practice of some other people? Or would we endeavor to enlighten the people on who Imam Hussain was really and what was the real story of Karbala? The reason we would do the latter is because Imam Hussain alayhi salam means something to us. He is important to us. So we cannot tolerate seeing people revering him with wrong ideas. In the very same manner, Nabi Allah Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salam is very important to us. He is the link between Musa ala nabiyina alayhi salam and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He is called the Spirit of Allah, Ruhullah, and he is the messenger to whom Injil was revealed. So when we live in the midst of people who revere him, but with an understanding that is very different from the understanding of the Quran, it must concern us as well. At least enough for us to want to do something about it. Christmas is not like Diwali, where you may say it is a celebration of a religion that Islam does not recognize or a tradition based on some legend or myth. Isa alayhi salam was real, even if the facts surrounding him have been lost over the ages. Some of us have tried to build bridges with the Christian communities individually, but it has gone unnoticed. And some of us have even gone about the wrong way of doing this. Instead of sharing Islam's view of Jesus, some of us have adopted the Christian culture in an attempt to integrate into society. For example, some Muslims will keep a Christmas tree in their homes and give their children Christmas gifts. This, of course, is not out of an Islamic sense of duty to get to know the Christian brethren better or to share with them what we believe regarding Jesus. Rather, it is usually out of pressure from the kids, to a point that we are willing to embrace a tradition and a culture that is alien to Islam, and a celebration that many know to be untrue. I say untrue because even respected scholars in the Christian world have doubted that Jesus was born on the 25th of December. How Christmas came to be and the commercialization of Christmas is a long story, and that is not why I am discussing the subject today. All I wish to say is that we need to think along the lines of engaging the Christian community, not as individual Muslims, but as a Muslim community. This can be through interfaith dialogues, for example, or it can be through a conference where Muslim scholars who are knowledgeable in Christian thought, as well as Muslim reverts from Christianity and Catholicism, would speak about what Islam has to say about Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salam, and his mother, of course. And the audience invited would be the Christian churches and the masses at large. The intention of such a gathering would not be to convert anyone, for guidance is only for Allah to give. Ours is to deliver the message and share what we believe. Take some time today to think about the potential outcome if we do not ignore Christmas as a Muslim community. On 17th December this year, the BBC website ran a news article about a church in New Zealand that put up a billboard in public to defame Maryam alayhi salam. And on that billboard, they put some words that I cannot repeat here, but the gist of it is to say it casts doubt on the chastity of Maryam. And this was not done by atheists. It was done by a church on the pretext of invoking discussions amongst people. Needless to say, the Catholic Church, amongst others, condemned it as disrespectful and inappropriate. And you can go see this article. They have a picture of Mary and Joseph, who Christians believe to be the man she was engaged to, and they're sleeping in bed, half naked. And there is a billboard that they put in public with that. The Catholic Church condemned it as disrespectful and inappropriate. Now think of the opportunity lost. What if Muslims had also protested against this the way they do for everything else? What if we, the Muslims, had published a polite condemnation in the papers with an apt verse of the Quran concerning what the Quran says about Maryam alayhi salam? Or what if the Muslims in Toronto had united with the local Catholic and Christian churches and hold a joint press conference in defense of the personalities of Maryam alayhi salam and Isa alayhi salam? What do you think the result of forging such a relationship might have been? If tomorrow some crazy fanatic commits a terrorist act in the name of Islam, it is these same churches who would stand to defend us and to speak of our nobility and disassociate us from those fanatics. But it's not just about security or looking out for our backs or saving our skins. We wouldn't have kept quiet if it was Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Isa alayhi salam should not be any less important in our eyes, because it was he who prophesied the coming of our prophet. It is he who said to the Bani Israel that I come to you مُصَدِّقًا لِمَا بَيْنَ يَدَيْكُمْ مِنَ التَّوْرَاتِ, to confirm that which is before you of the Torah that Moses brought you. وَمُبَشِّرًا بِرَسُولٍ يَأْتِي مِنْ بَعْدِ اسْمُهُ أَحْمَدٍ, and I come to give you good news of a messenger who will come after me. So he is an important link in Islam. If we were to have a conference during the days leading up to Christmas to talk about what Islam has to say about Jesus and compare Jesus in the Bible and in the Quran, and invite the local Christian community to come and listen, undoubtedly they would come. But look at the opportunities that would unfold thereafter. Perhaps in due course, some churches may invite Muslims to speak to them about Jesus at their own churches. And once there is a rapport between us, they may in turn come and listen to what we have to say about our Prophet on Miladun Nabi. Or they may come and listen to what we have to say about Imam Hussain alayhi salam on a Hussain Day event. And this is how the message of Islam and of Karbala would reach to the public and to the non-Muslim audience at large. But instead, what do people do in the name of Islam? In Iraq, a historic church was bombed on Wednesday and 2 Christians were killed. If the Christian population is wiped out or removed, apparently the Christian population is dwindling in Iraq now. If the Christian population is wiped out or removed from Muslim countries, not because they choose to migrate or because they embrace Islam, but because of violence against them, it is not a matter to be proud of. It is something to be ashamed of and a failure on the part of Muslims. And what are the Christians doing in return in the name of their faith? One Catholic archbishop in Iraq has discouraged Christmas decorations and public merrymaking out of respect for Ashura this year. And a Christian 51-year-old surgeon in Basra is quoted as saying, and this obviously has made it to world news, "We used to put the Christmas tree with its bright lights close to the window and in the entrance of our homes. But this year we put it away from the window as a sign of respect for the feelings of the Shia Muslims in our neighborhoods because of Ashura." Do you see the difference in how they spread their faith and how we share Islam with others? In Ziyarat Warith, we describe Imam Hussain alayhi salam and say, "Assalamu alayka ya waritha Isa ruhillah." So there is a strong cord and connection of all those guides that Allah ever sent. From Adam to Nuh to Ibrahim to Musa to Isa to Al-Mustafa to Karbala and beyond to the Mahdi alayhimus salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala. Each one of them is an integral part and a shining bead in the rosary of guidance. If you ignore or break one bead out, then all the other beads are scattered and lose their relevance. You cannot have Hussain without Isa, just as you cannot have Isa without Hussain, because one is the warith of the other. If Hussain keeps the message of Isa alayhi salam alive and saves it from vanishing, then in turn Isa alayhi salam gives validity to the truth that Hussain stood for. And that is why we say, "Assalamu alayka ya waritha Isa ruhillah." That connection is very, very important. And even when the Mahdi alayhi salam returns, Isa alayhi salam's return is very significant because he validates the truth of who the real Mahdi is. And that is why both Shia and Sunni Muhaddithin have quoted a very, very famous tradition from the Prophet that says, "Kayfa bikum idha nazala fikum Isa ibn Maryam wa imamukum minkum." How shall it be for you, O Muslims, when Isa ibn Maryam descends amongst you, but the Imam shall be from amongst you? And this is recorded in Bukhari and Muslim and Musnad Ahmad ibn Hanbal and so on. And in another tradition that is also quoted by Shia and Sunni authentic sources, it says that when the Mahdi offers Isa ibn Maryam to lead in Salat, Isa ibn Maryam will refuse and says, "Allah has made some of you the umara, the leaders, the amir over others. This is the takreem and the honor that Allah has given this ummah." He will insist that the Mahdi leads. So for those who doubt that besides Rasulullah, in what way is an imam superior to the Prophet, think about this hadith. We need to think about Christmas from an Islamic perspective and see how we can be proactive in sharing Islam's view of Jesus, peace be on him, and what our message as Muslims speaking to the Christians needs to be, and how best to communicate this message to them. إن أحسن الحديث وأبلغ الموعظة كتاب الله أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحليم الكريم غافر الذنب وقابل التوب وهو الغفور الرحيم. سبحان من سبقت رحمته غضبه وبسط اليدين بالرحمة. سبحان من لم يكلف نفسا دون وسعها وعفى عن السيئات ولم يجار بها. سبحان من لا يزداد على معاصي العباد إلا كرما وجودا وعلى كثرة الذنوب إلا عفوا وصفحا. نشهد أن لا إله إلا هو العطوف على العباد بجوده والعواد على المذنبين بحلمه. ونشهد أن محمدا نبيه وحبيبه سيد المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين بعثه رحمة للعالمين صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الداعين إلى سبيل الله بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة قادم الأمم وأولياء النعم ومعدن الرحمة. أوصيكم عباد الله ونفسي بتوبة. أما بعد. In 2 days from now, we mark Ashura. And we remember the Madhloom of Karbala, Sayyid al-Shuhada alayhi salam. And I wish to talk about the importance of Ashura, despite it not being unknown to you. There are people in this world today who still refer to Yazid as Amirul Mu'mineen and who still say Radiyallah after the tyrant's name. This week a number of bombings have occurred in Iraq already against Christians and against the Shia. And this will continue at least until Sunday. The use of violence to stop others is a sign of defeat. It follows the sunnah of Yazid, that when you cannot stand up to the truth, you try and suppress it with violence. In one incident this week, a group of people pitched a tent and they were giving water to pilgrims when they were bombed. In other words, not only should Hussain not get water, but even those 1400 years later who give water to others must be stopped. We pray for the safety of all our brothers, inshallah, in Iraq and in all over the world. But sometimes our children wonder if all that we do in Muharram is just cultural and what significance it plays in Islam. And that is why I wish to talk about the importance of marking Ashura and what it represents in Islam. I mentioned last week that Hussein is important because without his rising, Yazid would have destroyed or changed Islam beyond recognition. There would have been no Kaaba and there would have been no Quran today without the blood of Hussein. This itself proves that Hussein alayhi salam was chosen by Allah to preserve the message of Rasulullah and the Quran. And every Muslim believes in the authentic hadith of Thaqalain, that I leave behind the Quran wa itrati ahl bayti. I talked about Ziyarat Warith in the first sermon. If you think about it, Allah's message to the human race has always been one, and that is the message of Tawheed. That you know who your Creator is, and that you worship no one besides Him. Neither physically worship idols or the fire, nor symbolically and psychologically worship anyone besides Allah, such as other human beings or wealth or prestige or kinship or power or pleasure. This message of guidance, of hidayah, started with Adam alayhi salam. Nuh built an ark for 200 years just to save this message. He floated in the raging seas with 72 followers, while the rest of humankind drowned and were destroyed only to preserve Tawheed. Yunus alayhi salam was swallowed by a fish to keep this message alive. Ibrahim alayhi salam jumped into a fire to save La ilaha illallah. He placed a knife on the throat of his only son so that Tawheed is not lost. Musa alayhi salam left Egypt and all things familiar to him on the spur of a moment, and then went back and faced Fir'aun and fought against all odds and crossed a parting sea just to save Tawheed. Isa alayhi salam risked his life and was almost crucified until Allah raised him for this reason as well. Isa alayhi salam brought the dead back to life and healed the lepers and the blind just to prove that there is no God but Allah. Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, split the moon and walked on thorns and tolerated people stoning him, returning every night home bleeding from head to toe. People called him a magician, a madman, a sorcerer, a poet. All this, why? Because he would not stop saying, قُولُوا لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ تُفْلِحُوا. Say La ilaha illallah so that you may be saved. Whether Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam kept quiet over his right, or whether he fought in Jamal and Siffin and Nahrawan, it was only to save Islam. Fatima alayhi salam gave up her right to fadak, and even when her baby was miscarried through violence, she kept quiet so that the adhan would still call out La ilaha illallah. Hassan alayhi salam signed a peace treaty, let go of his right, drank poison and threw up pieces of his liver so that you and I can prostrate before Allah and say Subhana Rabbiyal A'la wa bihamdih and know who our Creator is. Now, when Hussein came to Karbala, he brought all this with him on his shoulders. That is why he is the warith of Adam and the warith of Nuh and the warith of Musa and the warith of Ibrahim and the warith of Isa and the warith of Al-Mustafa and all those before him. Because he carried this hidayah on his shoulders. If Hussein was to fail in Karbala, then all guidance ever sent to human beings would fail. Yazid represented the darkest period in Muslim history. Keep in mind that even the madhahib that you have amongst the Sunni Muslims today, the Shafi'i, Maliki, Hanafi, Hanbali, this came about, the formation of these came about during the time of Imam al-Baqir and Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam later on. In other words, at the time of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, the aqidah and the fiqh and the knowledge of Muslims had not yet been established so solidly. At that point it was Hussein and it was Yazid. And if Hussein was to fail, then all guidance to human race would fail. And that is why on the day of Ashura we must not forget Zainab alayha salam as well. Because the sacrifice of Hussein and his victory over Yazid and the revival of Islam would not have emerged from the sands of Karbala if it was not for her. You see, when Imam Hussain alayhi salam fell from his horse on the day of Ashura, then Hidayah itself fell from the horse. Islam fell. The Quran fell. No, I should say the Kaaba itself fell on the hot sands of Karbala. Adam fell, Nuh and Ibrahim fell, Musa and Isa and Muhammad fell, Ali and Fatima fell, Hassan fell. They all fell when Hussein fell because he carried this. He was the warith of all of this. So all of it now rested with him. And this is put very beautifully by a poet in Urdu. He says that when Hussein fell, he says, Shabbar gire, butul giri, Mustafa gire. Sadma hua ye dil pe ke sab anbiya gire. Chauthe falak se Hazrate Isa bhi gir pare, behosh ho ke tur pe Musa bhi gir pare. So he makes a very fine point that without Hussein, nothing would have remained. So when he fell, all the Anbiya fell. But the poet then brings out a more subtle point, of course, that there is a difference between Hussein and the others. Yes, it is true that when Hussein fell, Chothe falak se Hazrat Isa bhi gir pare, behosh ho ke tur pe Musa bhi gir pare. But then he says, Tarpa idhar to khak pe Zahra ka ladla. Zahra pukarti thi ke faryad ya Khuda, mera Hussein doop ke andar hai jal raha. So the satanic forces of evil and darknesses, once Hussein fell, this Shaitan himself saw an opportunity to wipe out guidance from the human race. And the satanic forces of evil and darkness approached this thirsty, dying Islam. And with a blunt dagger, it slaughtered and cut the throat of this thirsty Islam. Everything came shattering down. For a moment, it was all over. Yazid had won. He could now do as he pleases and explain what happened in Karbala as he wished. All the efforts of Adam to Khatam were gone. And as he bled, because Hussein was an Imam and therefore he was the Hujjah of Allah, the proof of Allah on the heavens and the earth, and the Imam over Ins and Malaika and Jinn, and because Allah sends His blessings to the world through His representative, and He was the axis through which the whole fabric of the universe connected, as he bled, this fabric was threatened. It began to weaken, as if it was about to tear apart and to be rent asunder. And that is why both the Shia and the Sunni sources have said that not only did human beings cry for Hussein, but the jinn cried for him. And they have said, for a moment the sun was eclipsed on the day of Ashura, and the stars came out, and people thought the day of judgment had come to pass. A shockwave rippled through Karbala. The land began to quake. The heavens rained blood. Every stone began bleeding, and every tree and every leaf turned red. The waters of Furat began rising, fi mawjin kal jibal. They rose like waves, calling out, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, as if saying, Oh Hussein, we are majboor and cannot come to you, but you come to us that we may quench your thirst. And as Islam itself, guidance itself was perishing, something amazing happened. Something most unexpected. A woman in white, whose white abaya was covered in the blood of Ali al-Akbar, was seen running out from the Khayyam of Hussein. She came running out towards the battlefield as if to save Islam. Whether there were 30,000 soldiers or 120,000 soldiers, they fought 72 men, they killed a 6-month-old baby, but now they all stood watching. No one could stop Zainab. Those of you who have been to Karbala, those of you who have not, may Allah inshallah bless you with the ziyarah, you have seen the distance from Tilla Zainabiyya to the Qabr of Hussein. So she must have gone at least that distance while they stood watching, not able to stop her. Then she placed her hands under the body of Islam itself. And like a standard or a flag that had fallen in a battlefield, but is raised once again, or like a phoenix rising from the ashes, she lifted Islam and the Quran once again. Her father had uprooted the gate of Khaybar. Zainab lifted the Kaaba again and set it right. Zainab now lifted Adam, Zainab lifted Ibrahim, Zainab lifted Nuh, Zainab lifted Musa, Zainab lifted Zakaria and Yahya, Zainab lifted Yaqub and Ismail and Ishaq and Dawood and Sulaiman and Isa, Zainab lifted Muhammad and Ali and Fatima and Hassan, and with all her might and all her strength, she lifted Islam itself, she lifted guidance itself once again and said, Allahumma taqabbal minna hadha al-Qurban. This is not a small matter, my dear brothers and sisters. Because now, the forces of Yazid realized that the battle is not over, it has just begun. Once again now, the adhan would be heard. Zainab had saved Makkah and Mina. Zainab had ensured that once again there would be salat and sawm and zakat and hajj, that the sacrifice of Hussein would not remain in Karbala. If the waters of Furat did not reach the children of Hussein, Zainab made sure that Zamzam would continue to flow. If today people throng in millions towards the Kaaba calling out Labbaik, Allahumma Labbaik, La Sharika Laka Labbaik, it is because of Zainab. It is because of Zainab and her stopping Yazid from silencing these voices. And it is because of her as well that once again now the son of Hussein, Ali Zainul Abidin, became the warith of the Anbiya. It is because of her that he could now turn to Yazid. Even though he was chained, he could look at him in the eyes and say to him, "O Yazid, this Muhammad who is mentioned in the Adhan, is he your grandfather or is he my grandfather?" It is because of Zainab that Zainul Abidin could now say, "Man arafani arafani," he who knows me knows me. He who does not know me, let him know me. In the court of Yazid. Now he was able to say, "Ana ibnu Makkata wa Mina, ana ibnu Zamzama wa Safa, ana ibnu Taha wa Yasin." I am the son of Makkah and Mina. I am the son of Zamzam and Safa. I am the son of Taha and Yasin. Because she saved Islam. And how many times Zainab saved Imamat itself? She saved him from a burning tent. She saved him when he saw his father's body when they were parting Karbala and his soul was about to leave from his body. She threw herself just to distract him. She saved him from being killed by Ibn Ziyad. One of the miracles that prove the right of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam is how narrowly guidance and hidayah escaped extinction, and how whenever Allah rescued Islam, He always did it through the children of Abu Talib. So Ashura is most significant. Let it not be small in your eyes, my dear brothers and sisters. When Imam Hussain alayhi salam sat beside his brother Hassan while he was poisoned and he was dying, and he saw that pieces of his brother's liver were in a tasht, in a tray beside him, and he was weeping for his brother, Hassan said to him, "Indeed you weep for me, O Aba Abdullah, walakin la yawmin ka yawmika ya Aba Abdullah." But there is no day like your day, O Aba Abdullah. So that day is the day of Ashura. Ashura is not the marking of a historic event. It is the reliving of a tragedy when guidance and truth narrowly escaped extinction. Even today, if the veils were lifted on the day of Ashura, you would see every tree and every stone bleeding, and you would see the heavens and the earth weep. And that is why poets have repeatedly said, كَذِبَ الْمَوْتِ فَالْحُسَيْنُ مُخَلَّدًا. Death is lying, for Hussein is eternal. كُلَّمَا أَخْلَكَ or كُلَّمَا مَرَّ الزَّمَانِ تَجَدَّدَ. Every time a new era comes to pass, the grief of Hussein is renewed. It comes to life. For those who say that the crying of Hussein is bid'ah, we have numerous traditions from Shia, of course, but even from Sunni sources. For example, we are told in a riwayah that is quoted widely by the Sunni muhaddithin, that when Hussein was born, the Prophet cried for Hussein. Because when he was asked why, he said, "Jibreel has come to me and said, your ummah will slaughter this son of yours." When the Prophet said, "Husaynun minni wa ana min al-Husayn," again from reliable Sunni sources, we are told that Fadl, one day just before the birth of Hussein, woke up frightened and came to Rasulullah and said, "I have seen a dream so frightening I cannot even describe." And Rasulullah said, "What did you see?" He said, "Ya Rasulullah, I saw that a piece of your flesh had cut out from your body and fallen into my laps." To which Rasulullah said, "Yes, Fadl, this is my Hussein that is about to be born. You will carry him in your laps. He is a piece of my flesh." And the hadith, "Husaynun minni wa ana min al-Husayn, ahabballahu man ahabba Husayna." Allah loves the one who loves Hussein. This has been reported by Tirmidhi as well. So sometimes people ask, how do I know if Allah loves me and how much does He love me? Here is a formula for you then. Because Allah loves one who loves Hussein. Look at your heart and see that when you hear the name Hussein, how much love do you feel for Hussein? That will tell you how much Allah loves you. Al-Haythami, another famous non-Shia scholar, in his Majma' says that not only did the Prophet cry when Hussein was born, but at least on one occasion when he passed outside the house of Ali and Fatima and he heard Hussein crying, he called out while his companions were with him, "O Fatima, do you not know that it troubles me to hear Hussein crying?" In other words, Rasulullah cannot even tolerate hearing Hussein cry. It's not just about him crying. And of course, the famous tradition that is quoted by Shia and Sunni scholars about the soil from Karbala, the dust from Karbala that was given to Salama, that Rasulullah said to her that when you see this changing to blood, then know that my Hussein has been killed. This tradition, both from Shia and Sunni accounts, does not say that Salama was sitting and she saw the dust change to blood. No, it says she was asleep. She woke up frightened and crying. And when they said to her, "What happened to you, Salama?" she said, "I saw Rasulullah in my dream without his amama. He was crying, وَعَلَى رَأْسِهِ وَلِحْيَتِهِ تُرَابٌ." He had dust on his beard and his head. He said, Salama, are you sleeping? My son Hussein has just been slaughtered." It is then that Salama went to look at the canister that had the dust of Hussein. Hussein, even if you do not believe him to be an Imam, he is special in the eyes of the heavens and the earth. Shia and Sunni scholars have said the jinn have cried for Hussein, and to this day the heavens and the earth cry. At-Tabrani, Al-Haythami, they all report from Abu Huraira, who says that one day I was sitting with Rasulullah when Hussein was a young boy, and it got late at night, and Hussein said, "I wish to go back to my mother." Abu Huraira says, "I said to Rasulullah, let me escort him to his house." Rasulullah said, "Leave him, he does not need to be escorted." Abu Huraira says, "I stood at the door of the mosque, and as soon as Hussein stepped out, a lightning began to shine, and it kept shining and lighting the road and the path for Hussein until he entered the house, then it stopped." In other words, even the angels look out for Hussein. I know, especially for those of us who own our businesses, these are the days to make a profit. This is the holiday season. But let not your concern for this world reduce your engaging in the aza of Hussein. Even if it is profit that you seek, remember the reward that the mother of Hussein offers you on the Day of Judgment is far greater. And Rasulullah has said, "Inna liqatli waladi al-Husayn hararatun fi qulub al-Muslimin la tubridu ila yawm al-qiyamah." In the killing of my son Hussein, there is a fire that is lit in the hearts of the Muslims. Nothing will cool that fire until the Day of Judgment. This Sunday, from the time the sun rises in Australia and the Far East and makes its way passing through Karbala al-Mu'alla until it comes to the time of Asr, until the time of Asr comes to us, and the sun moves across our skies and moves on to the west coast. If you could stand in outer space and listen, all you would hear is a continuous voice from the east to the west, following the sun's movement, calling out, "Hussein, Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein." It does not matter whether you are a Shia or a Sunni, and whether some people practice certain things in Muharram that you disagree with. Find your own way to remember Hussein and to mourn for him. For this is a day when Rasulullah himself will be mourning and crying, and this should suffice for us. ألا قد أمركم الله في محكم كتابه بالصلاة على نبيه وحبيبه فقال تعليما لكم وتشريفا لسفيه إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيد المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى إمام المسلمين وقائد الغر المحجلين أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب صلوات الله عليه وآله. وعلى سيدة النساء العالمين وبضعة خاتم النبيين سيدتنا فاطمة بنت رسول الله صلوات الله عليها. وعلى الحسن المجتبى والحسين الشهيد بكربلاء وعلي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي عليهم الصلاة والسلام. اللهم صل على محمد. اللهم صل على مولانا صاحب الزمان ماحي آثار البدع والطغيان هادم بنية الشرك والنفاق حاصد فروع البغي والشقاق صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آبائه الكرم ما اتصل الليالي والأيام. اللهم عجل فرجه وسهل مخرجه واكحل ناظرنا بنظرة منا إليه واجعلنا من المستشهدين بين يديه وتفضل على أمرائنا المؤمنين بمزيد التوفيقات وازدياد الإقبال وعلو الدرجات. اللهم افعل بنا ما أنت أهله ولا تفعل بنا ما نحن أهله بجاه محمد وآله المعصومين صلوات الله عليهم أجمعين. اللهم اجعلنا ممن يذكر فتنفعه الذكرى. إن الله يأمركم بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. وأقيموا الصلاة يرحمكم الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي كان موجودا قبل حدوث الأشياء ويبقى بعد فناء الأشياء. تفرد بالأولية والقدم ووسم كل شيء ما عداه بالفناء والعدم. كما قال عز شأنه كل شيء هالك إلا وجهه وكل نفس ذائقة الموت. وقال كل من عليها فان ويبقى وجه ربك ذي الجلال والإكرام. سبحان من لا يخفى عليه اختلاف النيات ولا يعزب عنه معاصي العباد في الخلوات. سبحان الذي منه خلقة العباد وإليه المعاد. فمن يعمل مثقال ذرة خيرا يرى ومن يعمل مثقال ذرة شرا يرى. نشهد أن لا إله إلا هو الملك الذي لا ينازع في ملكه ولا يضاد في حكمه. يعذب من يشاء بما يشاء كيف يشاء ويرحم من يشاء بما يشاء كيف يشاء. تعذيبه المسيئين عدل وعفوه تفضل. ونشهد أن محمدا سيد المرسلين وخير المبشرين والمنذرين صلى الله عليه وآله الهداة المهديين. اللهم صل على محمد. من ركب سفينتهم نجا واهتدى ومن تخلف عنها ضل فغرق وهوى. أوصيكم عباد الله ونفسي بتقوى الله. أما بعد. Today and the coming Sunday are very significant days on the calendar, but for very different reasons. Most of the people living in our country are celebrating Christmas today. And we, the Muslims, are mourning for the martyrdom of the Prophet's grandson on Sunday. I will speak about Imam Hussain alayhi salam in the next sermon, but first we should draw our attention to the matter of Christmas. Last week I mentioned some festivals and celebrations that are celebrated in the Caribbean and in Indonesia to mark Ashura, and the belief of some Muslims that are based on legends and myths. If we were to live in the midst of such a society in Indonesia or in the Caribbean, what would our response have been? Would we shrug it off as a cultural practice of some other people? Or would we endeavor to enlighten the people on who Imam Hussain was really and what was the real story of Karbala? The reason we would do the latter is because Imam Hussain alayhi salam means something to us. He is important to us. So we cannot tolerate seeing people revering him with wrong ideas. In the very same manner, Nabi Allah Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salam is very important to us. He is the link between Musa ala nabiyina alayhi salam and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He is called the Spirit of Allah, Ruhullah, and he is the messenger to whom Injil was revealed. So when we live in the midst of people who revere him, but with an understanding that is very different from the understanding of the Quran, it must concern us as well. At least enough for us to want to do something about it. Christmas is not like Diwali, where you may say it is a celebration of a religion that Islam does not recognize or a tradition based on some legend or myth. Isa alayhi salam was real, even if the facts surrounding him have been lost over the ages. Some of us have tried to build bridges with the Christian communities individually, but it has gone unnoticed. And some of us have even gone about the wrong way of doing this. Instead of sharing Islam's view of Jesus, some of us have adopted the Christian culture in an attempt to integrate into society. For example, some Muslims will keep a Christmas tree in their homes and give their children Christmas gifts. This, of course, is not out of an Islamic sense of duty to get to know the Christian brethren better or to share with them what we believe regarding Jesus. Rather, it is usually out of pressure from the kids, to a point that we are willing to embrace a tradition and a culture that is alien to Islam and a celebration that many know to be untrue. I say untrue because even respected scholars in the Christian world have doubted that Jesus was born on the 25th of December. How Christmas came to be and the commercialization of Christmas is a long story, and that is not why I am discussing the subject today. All I wish to say is that we need to think along the lines of engaging the Christian community, not as individual Muslims, but as a Muslim community. This can be through interfaith dialogues, for example, or it can be through a conference where Muslim scholars who are knowledgeable in Christian thought, as well as Muslim reverts from Christianity and Catholicism, would speak about what Islam has to say about Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salam, and his mother, of course. And the audience invited would be the Christian churches and the masses at large.